And by doing this, PAL offered the community something that they needed. The community identified that they had a problem with violence. They needed a solution, and PAL offered that, while also simultaneously demonstrating how anti-speciesism formed a part of the solution. So when we're working within communities, particularly communities who are facing oppression, who are facing exploitation, when we identify a problem that they are facing, and then we figure out and explain how anti-speciesism is part of the solution and create a program that includes that as one element of the solution, then we can really build these really amazing community alliances where everyone is behind the goal and the tactics become part of that goal. So PAL works with their community rather than against them. They're always striving to offer their community something positive while spreading their message. And I think that's something that is really important. Like, some activism is going to be disruptive, is going to piss people off, and that is needed. But I think when we're talking about community, we're talking about working within communities. We need to be thinking, what is the incentive? How can we incentivize this? How can we make what we're doing give something back to the community? And I think a really great example in Australia at the moment is the duck shooting campaign. So people who don't care about ducks care about that campaign because they're worried about public safety. They're worried about what it does when men with guns, come into their community and start shooting. So that's just one example of a campaign that's already happening in Australia that knows their community, that is working within a community to identify a need and show them how anti-speciesism can be part of the solution. And I definitely think we need more campaigns like that. So next up, I cannot stress this enough, work with youth. So some people might know that I was one of the co-founders of Young Voices for Animals, which was a youth empowerment organisation that we just wrapped up in July, but we ran for about 2 years, and we did a bunch of youth programs. And the reason we decided to work with youth it's actually the reason we decided to was because we identified that there was a lack of youth spaces. But when we started working with youth, we realised the positives, the benefits of working with young people. So PAL partners with the main university in Palestine, so that's Al-Quds University, basically it means Palestinian University, Jerusalem University, and they take on volunteers through their volunteer program. So they have a connection within the university, and they have this volunteer program. People can choose to go to go to Ramallah and work with PAL. Usually these people aren't vegan, they're not vegetarian, they probably, have some care for animals, probably like them, but they go there and they get to be exposed to PAL's work. And they get to be exposed to how they unify human rights, land rights, and animal rights. And what that does, then they can go back to their university and they can spread that message further than PAL ever could. So PAL also runs Youth for Change. This empowers young people to create positive change in their communities and avoid violence. And many of PAL's public events are run by young people. They have a youth vegan club in Ramallah and they hold dinners, they hold movie screenings. I think when we were there, they just run a screening which was pretty popular and they had all vegan food. So working with youth means working with the people who will likely be most open-minded when it comes to altering their way of life. Additionally, youth generally have more free time and they're keen to do things that expand their circle of friends and fill their time meaningfully. So PAL recognises that youth are the future, and that when it comes to creating political change, when it comes to changing the cultural conversation to include animals in the anti-oppression movement, youth are the gateway. Youth are the people who have that capacity, who probably haven't been yet, they're exposed to violence every day, of course, but they probably haven't been yet indoctrinated into that idea that I am living in a state of survival. I cannot think about anyone except for me and my community. Youth are usually more open. Again, they have more time, and they're often pursuing, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to make change? How am I going to change the world? So when we're working with young people, we're expanding this opportunity to change the dialogue, because the conversations that young people have today are the society we live in 20 years. We can change Like, society can change so much in one generation, and we've seen it happen time and time again. The cultural conversation shifts. So when you're working with youth, you're changing that cultural conversation. You're enabling people to expand past their current circle of compassion. Know your enemies. I think this one is really important for a lot of movements, and Powell does it really well. And I don't usually like using the word enemy. The reason I use it is not to kind of create this antagonistic thing where we need to be like, oh, those are our enemies, we hate them. But it's to expand on this idea, again, of communities, and how, when we're identifying oppression, we need to think about who are the oppressors, who are our fellow oppressed. But sometimes our fellow oppressed aren't people we like. They aren't people we get along with. So when I'm talking about enemies, I'm not talking about the people who kind of piss us off. I'm talking about the people who create the systemic systems of injustice that we need to be fighting against. So Powell knows who their oppressors are, and they know that the people in their community are their fellow oppressed. So it would be easy for Powell to look at the Bedouin tribes and say, they are our enemies. They are using animals, they are exploiting animals, they are our enemies, we need to rally against them. But they don't. They look at them and they see that they are their fellow oppressed, and they strive to work with them to make achievable change, to build that cultural conversation so the next generation can make even more change. So Powell never forgets who their oppressors are. They strive to rally against them, not their fellow oppressed. And this often means accepting that their community will not move forward quite as quickly on animal rights issues as they would like, given how full their lives are with their own oppression. So Powell never forgets their purpose, and that's another really important point. They never forget that they're an anti-species organisation. But they accept their environment, and they support their communities to make changes that are achievable given their circumstances. So we have many people in our own community and our country who struggle to open their hearts to other animals because of their hearts are already full with the suffering of their own people. So rather than seeing them as enemies, we should side with them as fellow oppressed individuals and understand that change might happen slower for them. At the same time, we should welcome them into our spaces and our movement and support their liberation movement to the extent of our capacity. We aren't superhumans. I understand it can be overwhelming to get behind one movement. Like, activist burnout is a real thing, and there's actually going to be a talk on that in this room right up next. So please go on to that. But it can be really hard to try and expand our circle of compassion to everyone who's oppressed, and that can just lead to feeling awful and feeling like you can't make any change. But when I say supporting other liberation movements to the extent of our capacity, that means knowing who the real oppressors are, knowing what systemic injustices are occurring, knowing who is struggling against that, and understanding that that might limit people's ability to absolutely side with their movement. But that doesn't mean that you can't work with them, that you can't build coalitions, that you can't build relationships, and that you can't work towards common goals. We should all be striving to work towards common goals that make the world a safer, better place for everyone. Next up, staying connected. So Powell is connected to the anti-apartheid movement in their country. They see animal, human, and land rights as interlinked and inseparable. So this gives them a wider ally pool, and it also broadens their perspective, which allows for more strategic action. So as an example of this, I told you that I went on a political vegan tour of Palestine with the Palestinian Animal League. It was an 8-day tour. We spent one day with the Palestinian Animal League. Every other day, we went on tours with locals of different countries. They told us about the politics of Palestine. Every day we went on a tour of a different place. A local gave us the tour. They told us about their reality. They told us about what daily life is for them. These people supported the Palestinian Animal League. Most of them weren't vegan, they weren't vegetarian, they weren't animal rights activists though. They were usually human rights, land rights activists, and PAL had built alliances with them. So 6 out of the 8 days, we visited different towns, different cities. We went on a food tour of Jerusalem. We went to Hebron, which is one of the most heavily under oppression. Every day we had local guides show us around, tell us about their daily reality. And then one day we went to Palestine, and one day we went to the Dead Sea and had a relaxing day. Well, as relaxing as you can be when the Dead Sea is apparently for the first time in our guide's memory had waves, so that's fun. But yeah, one day out of those 8 days, we went and saw the Palestinian Animal League, and we spent about 2 hours there, actually, in the end. The rest of the time we hung out with protesters who were kind of gathering against the Israeli soldiers who were blockading the road. And at the end of it, we were talking to our guide, and we were like, we didn't actually learn anything about PAL. They didn't tell us about what they do. So she kind of sat down and she told us about what they do. And we were kind of a bit confused. We were like, why have they brought us here on this tour? Why have they told us they're going to tell us about all their work and then taken us on a drive around Palestine, pointing out all the refugee camps, taken us on a drive around Ramallah and introduced us to a bunch of people who aren't involved with PAL at all? And then as we talked to our guide, as we started to understand, and later on as I talked more to PAL's founder, I began to understand how essential connection is to them. They go to the protests. They put themselves on the front lines of the human rights protests. They are there as well because they understand that for their people, this issue is happening every day, and it's the reality for them as well. The founder of PAL lives in the refugee camp. He was born, I think he was born there, which is in Ramallah. So he lives in this. People in Palestine can't divorce themselves from their movement. They can't choose not to care. There's a privileged few who can choose to be not political, but pretty much everyone we met in Palestine was intensely political because they didn't have a choice. PAL recognises that. And we need to as well, because there's people in our society for who that is also the reality. People who are living, I'm just going to check my time, I'm good. People who are living on our streets, homeless, they can't divorce themselves from their reality. And that's what I do in my day job actually. I talk to year 9s usually about the social issues that are happening on the streets of Melbourne. People who are under active colonisation, Indigenous Australians, can't divorce themselves from their political reality. People who are experiencing mental health, physical health issues, people with disabilities, people who are experiencing oppression of any kind because of the colour of their skin, because of their sexuality or gender, they do not have the luxury of divorcing themselves of their political reality. So when we stay connected, when we understand that those movements have to exist just as ours has to exist, then we increase our ally pool, we increase our movement for liberation because it becomes a movement of movements. It becomes a movement against oppression, not the animal rights movement and the other movements. So PAL models an example of staying connected, of understanding that animal rights doesn't exist in a vacuum, that it exists because of systems of oppression that are built in to our society and unfortunately built into most societies. So when we stay connected, we can challenge that and we are stronger together. So my final point is elevating the marginalised. And I put this last, but I cannot stress how important it is. So the Palestinian Animal League, they do have Israeli supporters. There are a lot of Israeli people who are against colonisation, who are against the apartheid of Palestinian people, and they are activists, they are supporters. I'm definitely not coming up here and saying all Israeli people are evil, hate them. I'm saying that Palestine and the Palestinian Animal League elevate the people who are experiencing active oppression. So the voices of the marginalised need to be heard. So while PAL has Israeli supporters, and if they were to use these supporters to openly speak in favour of them, they would probably get more public support. In fact, when we were there, we were told by multiple Palestinian activists that they would often attend a panel or a conference about Palestinian issues and would be composed almost entirely of Israeli activists and academics. There would usually be one token Palestinian. And if you think about it, it's quite similar when we think about women's rights. You have a panel on abortion and it will be 4 men and 1 woman being like, hey, this kind of affects me. So when we don't elevate the marginalized, we kind of reinforce the dominant narrative. We reinforce what is already accepted. So Pal could put their Israeli activists on a pedestal. And as we all know, Israel is often considered, like Tel Aviv is often considered the vegan capital of the world. I could do a whole nother presentation on vegan washing and how that happens in Israel. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. But Pal could easily use that. They could use their Israeli activists, they could get so much more support. So many bloggers go on paid trips to Tel Aviv to write about the vegan food there. And Pal always offers these people, they say, look, we understand that you're coming over here, will you please come and do a tour with us as well? So all these bloggers, YouTubers, animal rights activists who are being paid by Israel to go over there and share their experiences of Tel Aviv, Pal has approached them. This is actually why they created the tours in the first place, because they approached them and said, just come to us, see the other side. We don't ask you not to go on the tour, but we ask you to come to us, we'll give you a free tour of Palestine. Not even one of them responded to those messages of those invitations. So Pal created their own tours to try and get people to come and see their realities. So when we reinforce the dominant narrative, when we don't elevate the marginalized, their stories get so lost. And they don't have the capacity, they don't have that voice, because Pal can scream, they can write letters to these bloggers, but they don't listen to them. So what they do is they make sure that no matter what, they are allowing the voices of the oppressed to speak about their oppression. So Pal chooses to elevate Palestinian voices, and when we're talking about our movement, we can choose to center animals. We can choose to center the voices of people who are experiencing oppression, because they're the ones who have that direct experience. They're the ones who understand what it feels like. They're the ones who can help us develop strategies that work with communities, that empower people, that aren't belittling or humiliating, as we unfortunately quite often see when privileged people try and speak using or for people who are experiencing oppression. It's so easy to get it wrong. It's so easy, even with the best of intentions, it's so easy to say the wrong thing. I've said the wrong thing so many times, and it is only because I have people around me and I do my best to seek out knowledge and to seek out voices of people who are actively oppressed. It's only because I've done that I have not completely put my foot in my mouth. It is so easy to get it wrong, but when we elevate the voices of those who are oppressed, I wish that I had someone from the Palestinian Animal League speaking here. That was the intention. That didn't happen this time, hopefully next year. But when we elevate those voices, they can speak authentically on their reality. And that's the only way we can learn, that's the only way we can move forward, it's the only way we can build a strong movement. So I've got 5 minutes left, and I'm pretty much done. I've got this lovely picture. This is Youth for Change. So this is one of Pal's programs where young people come together to break that cycle of violence. They run programs in their community, and it's just a great space. If you go to the Palestinian Animal League's website, there's some fantastic pictures of just young people having fun and enjoying a social space, which is a place where they can be heard, which is a place where they can feel politically empowered. So animals, humans, land. The Palestinian Animal League believe that these are all connected, that their oppression and that their liberation is connected. And when we believe that, we build this movement, we build this strong, empowered movement which can lead us into the future and which can help us grow as a community and which can actually build a new society, not just destroy the old one. So when we think of these 3 things in tandem, then our society can start to become shaped, like we can shape it in our heads. We can start to imagine this liberated future. I've got some further reading here, which I'll just finish off with. As I said earlier, sorry about the type, it's a bit hard to read, but as I said earlier, I really want to elevate Palestinian voices. So the top ones are some further reading. So there's a Palestinian Animal League, you can just Google it, Palestinian Animal League. So it also is, just Google Palestinian Animal League. There's also Electronic Intifada, so Intifada is resistance. There's been 2 intifadas in Palestine, all have faced considerable repression. And that's a kind of digital newsletter, magazine, newspaper, which documents kind of the realities of what's happening in Palestine. It's really good to read, it's really good to keep up to date with what's happening, because often the media don't report what's happening in Palestine. So you'll go onto the Electronic Intifada and you'll be like, oh wow, 5 people were killed yesterday, and you see it nowhere. You go on, you realise there was a bombing in Gaza last week. I didn't hear about that. So the media often aren't there. They often don't report it as well. There's also Active Stills, which is a group of photographers, and they take photos in kind of conflict zones, and Palestine is one of them. They actually have been in Gaza during bombings, which is really rare. No one can go into Gaza unless you're a journalist. It's an open-air prison, pretty much. So it's really rare to be able to see footage from within Gaza. And more from me as well. So I've done a couple of podcasts which touch more on the political side of Palestine. So talk a little bit about the animal rights, but they're more political based. So they are all on progressive podcasts, which you can Google, Facebook as well. There's one which is Animal Rights in Palestine, which was on freedom of species. Again, you can Google freedom of species, you can find that. There's a myth-busting report back from Palestine on Progressive Podcasts, and Changing the Conversation about Palestine, also on Progressive Podcasts. I'm going to plug myself really briefly. So I'm going to be writing quite a bit more about Palestine, as well as sharing some more videos, and I shared quite a lot while I was over there about kind of the daily reality of being there and what I learned from the Palestinian activists who I talked to. So that is, I'm Holly Eccles on Facebook, so HOLLYECKELLS. So feel free to add me, look that up. I have a blog on Medium as Harley McDonald-Eckersall, and I'll be sharing the footage of this presentation as well as the slides. So yeah, if you're interested, check me out. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming along. This conversation needs to happen, and I'm really privileged to be able to have this conversation at this conference this year.